do here throughout Ignite is to promote a culture of sharing, gratitude, to enhance our learning process, and just to promote, goodwill amongst us as we go onward in this business. So I'd like to just ask a couple of people to share maybe what they're grateful so far in the Ignite course and in this new learning experience, this new learning journey. Does anybody have any comments that they want to make on anything that they've learned so far? Maybe an aha, a takeaway of some sort, maybe an opportunity that you see for yourself or something that you're excited about. We have about 18 people on the call here, so I know a couple people are going to have something to say.
Well, I guess I'll say something. I mean, it's been 3 weeks, so I don't just have one aha or one thing that I took away from it, but I will tell you that every day most days I've left the sessions with multiple things, and I'm like, wow, like that was great. So every day I've learned quite a few things, which is really great.
Fantastic. That's great.
Yeah, this is Sabine.
Anybody else have something they'd like to share?
Yeah, this is Sabine. I'm taking it the second time. I'm an agent for a little bit over a year now. And I get so much more out than the first time around because I have so much more experience and knowledge. So I learned something new also pretty much every day. Pretty awesome.
I can definitely relate to that because I also learn by facilitating. Sometimes you read or you hear things the second or third time a little differently than you did the first. And also you can get ideas from everyone else that's participating in the class. So we all learn together. And I think that's great. So I'm glad that you're back for a second go around. Today, our focus is going to be on making offers on behalf of your buyer clients. And as I mentioned before, we're also going to talk a little bit about receiving offers on the listing side. I hope that up to this point and beyond, that your daily habits that you're building for your success are going well. We'll have a chance later to talk about some of the things that you've been doing with your daily 10-4 and your habit building. And I'll be able to answer some questions if there are any and provide some input and kick around some ideas around those daily activities if you'd like to do that. So what do successful agents do every day? Well, my screen is frozen and I can't advance to the next slide. So that's the first thing we've got to do. This happened to me the last time I facilitated an Ignite, and for some reason I had to stop my screen share and start over. Bear with me for just a moment.
I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is anyway. Build your business and grow your business.
That's the slide. Chris, I have no idea why I'm locking up here when I'm trying to advance.
Try this. I made you the full host, so we'll see if it.
All right.
There we go. All
All
right.
right. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. But anyway, you're right. You knew what slide was coming next. Growing your business and running your business. So highlighted on the right-hand side are numbers 2 and 3, and that's showing buyers houses and negotiating contracts. Today, our goal is really to learn how to present offers when you represent a buyer and know how to respond to offers when you represent a seller. We're going to practice some scripts that you can use throughout the process and also learn how to set the stage for a positive negotiation experience. So this is where we are, reviewing the offer process, and this is going to give you an idea of the steps that you'll take to get to the point where you're ready to negotiate the offer with the seller's agent. So this slide is interesting because when you first look at it, it looks like it might be a linear progression, but sometimes it goes in a loop. and you do certain things over and over again because there's negotiations and renegotiations and different steps that happen actually multiple times. Once a buyer has found, let's call it maybe the perfect home or close to it, the seller is going to start looking forward to concluding the sale of the property. And this is where a lot of the fun and the magic really happens, and it also begins at this point. So going through this offer process, you've got a buyer making an offer, right? And then the seller really has three different things that they can do. They can counter that offer or part of that offer, but once you counter part of it, you're countering all of it. They can also accept the offer as written, or they may choose to reject the offer. That does happen sometimes. We really don't like to see that. We like to keep the ball rolling and try to get to the finish line. However, sometimes an offer just doesn't fit at all with what a seller is looking for, and they will actually go ahead and reject an offer. But learning in this process and building your negotiating skills and helping this process continue onward until you get to the finish line does require some patience, and it requires some specific skills. What do you think the emotions are that a buyer and a seller are experiencing at this stage? You know, the buyer's found a house, they've written an offer, it's getting presented to the seller. How do you think everybody's feeling?
Anxious.
Okay, anxious.
Especially right now in this market.
I think excited.
Yeah, excitement, right? I think a little bit of a lot of things. Probably some impatience, you know, wanting to get it wrapped up. I think there's some huge fear of loss with buyers because there's so many multiple offer situations going on. But you're right, all those things that were mentioned are definitely emotions that are being felt during this time period. Emotions are running hot with both parties typically, and as the professional that's representing the buyer or the seller, your job, my job, all of our jobs is to remain calm, be reassuring, be in control, and most importantly, communicate everything to your client. The guides that you have inside your KW app, if you've looked at those and if you've customized those at all, or if you're just going with the default seller and buyer guides, those can be important. If your client is using the app, they know what step of the process they're in, depending on whether they're a buyer or seller. So that can help to keep your clients up to date and also document your unique transaction process for buyers and sellers. Just as a note, we're not going to be covering the negotiation process itself today. It's really about preparing and sending and receiving offers. There's a whole separate class on negotiation, which you'll be getting to soon. So now that we see kind of how the offer process works, let's take a step back and let's see what we have to do to prepare ourselves to write the offer on behalf of our buyers. A little preparation can definitely go a long way. And we're going to now go over a resource that you have at your disposal that's going to help you in preparing the offer. In your participant guide on page 3, there's a checklist to prepare an offer. And it's excellent. I've gone through this a couple of times myself just to see what's in there. Number 1 is obtaining a pre-approval letter. Now, you probably already have this because you should really not be working with buyers that you don't know are qualified. So if you have a pre-approval letter already, let's make sure that it's current and that it's up to date and that it's at least approving them for the amount that they're going to be offering on the property, or maybe even more, so that the seller knows that they're really solid. Another thing you may be doing is you may be producing a comparative market analysis or a CMA to educate the buyers. I'm working with somebody right now and they've made 3 offers so far, none of which have been accepted, which is not uncommon in the market that we're in right now. You've probably heard a lot of the stories. But what we do each time, and it's very important to them, is they want to see a CMA on the property that they're considering offering on, to give them, some guidance on where to go in terms of the price that they want to offer. Reviewing the tax records, just to see what you can learn from that, making sure that the taxes are accurate. Sometimes they're not represented correctly in the listing or in the MLS system, and it's always good to double check the tax records and see what you can find out and share that information with your buyer. Making sure the property is still available before you spend a lot of time doing all the rest of these things, right? There's times when they haven't changed the status, the listing agent hasn't changed the status yet in the MLS, and it still shows as active, and their client may have signed an offer an hour before, or they might be presenting offers as you're sitting down thinking about writing one. So just try to find out if it's 100% available, if there's any deadlines that you have to adhere to with submitting offers, and let your buyer know immediately if it's not available, and that way you can move on to the next without wasting a bunch of time. But it's always good to get that verification. When you're speaking with a listing agent also, it's really important to establish rapport, like it mentions on the checklist. Your relationships with other agents in the marketplace is really important. I can't overemphasize enough how important those relationships are. And you'll see as time goes on that you'll end up doing transactions, multiple transactions with the same agents. And the better your rapport is, the better you can work together, the more they trust you, the more you trust them, and it makes it a much easier road to putting a transaction together. So when you're building rapport, also try to gather any information that you possibly can about the seller and what their goals are and about the property. There could be specific things that are really important to the seller. And if you can find out what that information is, that you can share that with your buyer, and it'll help you to make a stronger offer that's going to be more attractive to the seller. It could be something pretty simple, like when do they want to move? Do they need to be somewhere by a certain date? How important is the closing date? Do they need it to be 45 or 60 days out, or do they have flexibility? Do they need to find a home before they can move out? We're starting to see more and more listings that say the seller will accept an offer contingent on them finding suitable housing for a certain period of time. So it becomes a negotiating point, possibly between the buyer and the seller. But find out what you can. There are things that a listing agent is going to be able to share with you as a buyer's agent that don't violate any confidentiality or any fiduciary duty that they might have for their seller. So you can ask some questions and see what information you can get. Inquiring about activity. Sometimes you as a listing agent might be asked, do you have any offers currently? Have there been any offers that have been rejected? You can ask questions like that to the listing agent. They don't have to fully disclose everything that's happened. They might give you more information than you think. So try to find out, once again, as much as you can, because I think that it will help you. Seller's disclosure statement, that's pretty standard. It's attached in the MLS. It's actually required in our MLS rules that that state form be attached to the listing. So that should be there. You've probably already looked at it at this point when you're about to write an offer. And it states what we just talked about at the bottom, finding out if there's been any other offers. And you may be surprised at the information that the listing agent might share with you. Any questions on that checklist? So you can use that as a guide to make sure that you're properly prepared before you actually write the offer. So now that we get into actually writing the offer, you've done a great job preparing. You've got all the information that you need, the documents. There's another checklist in the toolkit. On the next page, it's page 4, actually, in your participant guide, actually. I don't think it's the toolkit. It's a checklist to write an offer. So you can see what all of these items are. These are things that you're going to need to discuss with your buyer, and most of them are probably going to be part of the offer. They do talk about repairs in there and repair limits. Sometimes that's something you get into. Home warranties are something else that you might get into in the offer. But you're always going to be dealing with the basics, which are price, and terms, the seller's disclosure form, seeing if there's anything on there that the buyer might need more information about, or that might be a deal breaker. What's conveying with the property, okay? I always like to think of it as, if this is a residential property, that if you could take it and pick it up and turn it upside down and shake it, you know, everything that's attached or appurtenant or affixed to the property should be staying. It's a fixture. Then there are other things. Those are things like appliances, you know, washers, dryers, refrigerators, oven slash range, possibly a hot tub. There's all kinds of things that also might be included in the sale. They're usually appliances and pretty basic things like that, but there could be other things. I went on a listing appointment the other day, and the seller has a $50,000 or $60,000 home theater in their basement. And, you know, they said, look at our home theater. And I'm looking at this home theater and seeing what investment they've got into it, and all the speakers and the chairs and the gigantic screen and all the electronics and everything else that are in there. They put a lot of money and a lot of effort into that. And I said, what's going to happen with the home theater? Are there any parts of it that you're going to take with you? No, everything is staying. So that was really important to know. There could be a sauna in the basement. It could be anything. You know, the list goes on and on. So just make sure that you know what actually stays as part of the listing. And there might be other things that your buyer wants to ask for that aren't part of the listing, which are then again going to be a negotiating point. Earnest money deposits. Okay. I know that in different areas, earnest money is handled in different ways. In our Syracuse market, we, as the agents that are representing the buyers, we take the escrow
Hey,
money.
Jeff.
And yes.
Can you make me co-host again when your computer froze? I'm trying to let some people are trying to get in, and I can, if you make me co-host, I can join it.
You want me to let
Sorry
them
to
in?
interrupt. Yeah.
No, you did.
Jeff, going back to the conveyances, is a dehumidifier typically stay or go? Because I mean, technically you can pick that up and take it with you, but
I'm going to answer that in a second. Chris, tell me what to do here.
So if you go over my name, the Upstate Ignite, and you just look at more, you hover over it, you should be a more tab. You can make me co-host.
I don't see your name. Okay, wait a second.
It's Upstate. Yeah.
No, I know what you're talking about. I had another more button at the bottom.
Oh.
Okay, here we go.
Because there's some people. Oh, cool. All right. Awesome.
Okay, anyway, back to the dehumidifier question. I think that it needs to be listed on the purchase offer if the buyer expects it to stay. It's not something that is sometimes listed on the listing, and the seller a lot of times is intending on leaving it anyway. It's usually not a big deal. So I think most of the time it stays, but not always. And that's why it needs to be listed on the purchase offer if it's important. You know, sometimes the buyer will say, hey, if they want to leave it, I'll take it. If they don't, I don't care. So then it's not as important to list it, but if the buyers want it, you definitely want to write it down.
got it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So earnest money. Like I was saying, in Syracuse, and it might be different in Rochester, I don't know, but the buyer's agent's brokerage keeps the earnest money deposit after the offer is accepted in their escrow account. Ours is at M&T Bank. There are other marketplaces where the listing agent's brokerage may keep the deposit. There are some situations where a seller's attorney might hold the deposit. It really depends, but it's customary in our area for the buyer broker's brokerage to hold the deposit. And more importantly than who holds it, it's what should the amount be? For years and years, houses were being sold in this area with very small deposits, you know, $500, $1,000, $1,500, especially in the lower end of the price spectrum, say below 200,000. But now with the competitive nature of the marketplace, deposits are getting bigger and bigger. Another reason for bigger deposits is that the cost of title work has increased, abstracts and surveys and things like that. And in our purchase offer here, it says if the buyer doesn't get their mortgage commitment and the seller has done the title work, that the buyer can lose up to $1,500 of their deposit to reimburse the seller for the costs incurred. So that actually caused the amount of earnest money to go up a little bit too, to at least cover those amounts. But right now, it's really important when a buyer is making an offer to put their best foot forward. And even though if they don't get the offer accepted, they obviously aren't going to get their check cashed. It sends a message to the seller when they see a $20,000 deposit, or a $15,000 deposit or a $10,000 deposit. So as an agent personally, I'm trying to get as much as I can in earnest money. Now, if you've got an FHA buyer or a VA buyer or someone that's really squeaking in with barely enough money, then you're only going to be able to get a deposit for as much as those people are willing and able to do. But larger deposits can be really important, especially in this kind of a market. It mentions on your checklist that in many markets, 2 to 3% of the purchase price is normal. I've seen it go as high as 10%. But check with your team leader, check with your OP, check with your productivity coach or performance coach if you have one in your marketplace to find out, in your market center, to find out what's important. They also mention option money on there, and that comes up a couple of times in Ignite. That's really a Texas thing. We don't use option money here very much. It's money that you put up to during kind of a due diligence period, but we don't really use that here. So I'm not going to spend much time on that. Time for seller acceptance. Is anybody here from the Rochester market?
Yes.
Okay, tell me when an offer is written, if you know the answer, does it usually have a time limit on it by which the seller has to respond, or no?
Most of the time it's like 24 hours unless they have delayed negotiations, I think.
Okay. Now, here in the Syracuse market, it's very rare to see an offer with a time limit on it. It's just kind of a local custom. Sometimes people come from out of town and they'll say, well, I want to put a time limit on it of, noon tomorrow or 5 o'clock tomorrow. And if it's not accepted by that time, then the offer is pulled. It's null and void. And what I usually say to them is, you know what? We don't do that a lot here. And sometimes sellers take it the wrong way and they feel like they're getting pushed. And let's just see if we can get an offer responded to within a very reasonable period of time, like a day. And if we can't, and you're getting impatient, we can pull the offer at any time. We can always withdraw it. And usually that's the way that we do it. There are times when, maybe a buyer's relocating, they're here for a weekend, they really have to find a house on Saturday or Sunday because they're flying out on a Monday and they want to move in 45 or 60 days. And in those cases, sometimes we will put time limits on it because they need to know. They can't wait for 2 or 3 days. They need to know if they've got a house or not. And if they don't, they'll move on to the next. But it does differ from market to market. So that might be something that you're putting into your offers, and it might not be something that you're using commonly. Financing terms, buyer pre-approval letter, we already talked about. Mortgage commitment deadline, which they call loan approval. There's going to be a mortgage commitment deadline in most purchase offers. Typically in this area, we see 30 days out from the day that the offer was written that will have a mortgage commitment. There are some lenders that are starting to do that faster and faster now, where you can get a commitment sometimes in just a matter of a few days. It might have some conditions on it that have to be satisfied, but you can get a commitment faster now than it seemed like we were able to in the past. Closing date is something that you're going to need to address. If there's a home warranty being offered by the seller, or if a buyer is asking the seller to provide a home warranty, you're going to want to put a clause in about the home warranty that states that it's going to be provided and who's paying for it. Repair limits. There are some marketplaces where, let's say, there's a home inspection contingency, and there might be a clause in there saying that the buyer won't make an issue over any individual defect that costs less than $1,000 to repair or replace. That's pretty common. There could also be repair limits on lender required repairs. In our contract, it's clause 16E, and it says if the lender or the party providing financing requires repairs to the premises, that either the buyer or the seller will take care of those repairs, and you choose based on what your buyer wants to do, up to a certain amount. And if the repairs exceed that amount, then maybe either party could cancel the contract if the other party doesn't want to pay the difference. So those types of repairs are usually as a result of the appraisal. So you'll see that most commonly with FHA mortgages and VA mortgages, where they're looking for safety items, where there's peeling paint on the exterior of a house or a stairway with no handrail, a hole in the roof. Just about anybody's going to call on that. But broken windows are another thing that you'll see. I had one a couple years ago where there was carpenter bee damage, and they wanted an exterminator to exterminate the carpenter bees and have the holes filled up. So sometimes appraisers will come up with things that need to be taken care of. And the reason we're talking about it is because when you write an offer, you can address who and to what degree monetarily is going to be taken care of. Okay.
Jeff, when you talked about the closing date, that you may have mentioned this, but are we supposed to, when we write an offer, are we supposed to just select 60 days forward?
Not necessarily. I think
How do
60
we,
days is probably, the outside of the typical time frame. When people say, how long does it take to close? My sort of elevator speech answer is 45 to 60 days. If it's a cash offer, it could be sooner. If it's negotiated, otherwise it could be anytime. It could be later. But when you're writing an offer, I think if you know when the seller would like to close, if you've learned that from the listing agent, especially in this market, I think you can tailor the way you write the offer to that. You've got to leave enough time for financing if your people are getting a mortgage, and your people also may have needs that have to be met also. And that's going to guide what you put in for the closing date. Our closing dates here are on or about dates. And it hardly ever happens on the date that the on or about date on the contract states. It's usually a little earlier or a little later. It's just kind of a ballpark. If someone, has to get in, an agent might put on or before, or they might write time is of the essence. Attorneys hate when we write time is of the essence because that puts them under fire, and they don't want, the pressure to have to close on a specific date because they're usually trying to schedule it with 2 other lawyers, and they're depending on people to do title work for them that might get delayed. So they don't usually like that too much. At least that's been my experience. But does that help?
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, 60 days is, I think, pretty typical in a lot of cases. It's usually 45 to 60.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So anyway, special clauses or contingencies. They talk about special conditions that must be met in order for the contract to close. Could be a home inspection, a radon test. The buyer obtaining financing, of course, is pretty standard if they're getting a mortgage. The buyer may have a home to sell that's not on the market yet. They might have a home that has to close that already has an accepted purchase offer on it. All of those things need to be addressed in the offer. And most of the Board of Realtors purchase offers in the various marketplaces across the region have clauses in there that can be selected or not selected to cover those scenarios. Okay. So just get familiar with your contract. And then you're going to know what boxes have to be checked and what each one of those individual items means. You don't need to really, in my opinion, completely memorize the purchase offer, but you need to be able to be familiar with all the sections of it so that you can paraphrase when you're talking to your client what the different parts of it mean, and answer questions that they may have. Chris, you there? locked again. I have no idea why that keeps happening. Okay. So this checklist, once again, is a good guide to keep you going. It says in here that time is of the essence when your client wants to write an offer, and using these prepared checklists will help you to work quickly and efficiently and not miss things. Such a big part of our business is service. And the first broker that I ever worked for used to say to me when I was a 23-year-old kid in the real estate business, sometimes this business appears to be very casual. He'd say to me, Jeff, there's nothing casual about this business. The clock is always ticking and you always have to be moving faster than everybody else to get things done. And the more times that you do that, the more times you're going to win. And he was right. So there is nothing casual about the business, and we've got to move quickly to provide the best customer service that we can, as long as it's within the time frame that our client, wants to meet and wants us to get things done. So now we're going to get into actually writing an offer. And our goal in this section is to help you put together an offer that you and your clients can really be satisfied with and be proud of. This is really your chance to shine. You're going to need a copy of the contract to purchase, obviously, that you use in your marketplace, in your market center, and then use that checklist on page 4 to help you write that offer, and you're going to know that you've covered your bases. I like to say that one of my least favorite things in this business is what I'm going to call sloppy real estate. And I hope that all of you do not practice sloppy real estate, because your integrity, your reputation, your professionalism are always on the line. And what I mean by that is that accuracy and completeness with all your forms is extremely important. It's important that you make sure that your math is correct when it comes to the purchase price and the earnest money deposit and the cash at closing and the amount of financing, all adding up. Make sure that all of the initials are there and that you've gotten them from your client and that they've signed everywhere that they're supposed to sign, and that all of the required addenda are there that you're going to need. It seems like we have more and more paper all the time. And now with COVID-19 and with fair housing, over the years, we added on an additional information form. Of course, the state required seller disclosure of property condition form. It's more and more and more and more and more and more all the time. So it's important to have all those things on your checklist and to make sure you've got all the right paperwork. When a listing agent receives an offer and it's half-baked, so to speak, it just doesn't speak well to you, and you're not representing your client well. So review your work. Make sure that it's complete, that it's accurate, that it's professional before you just send it out there. Any issues that I've run into when I was new at writing offers, sometimes you do forget things. We're all human beings, and once in a while we forget something or we kind of mess something up. And it's nice if the agent on the other end sees it as a teachable moment and helps you to go ahead and make sure that the corrections are made. And when you're on the listing agent side and maybe a new agent brings an offer to you that's not perfect or that needs a little bit of tweaking or needs some repair, helping them walk through that process, they're going to appreciate it, just like you did if you were on the other side of it. So use these times as kind of teachable moments when there's issues that might come up. So in your participant guide, on page 5, you'll see pretty much the same thing that you're looking at on the screen here with the slide that I shared. And it talks about creating offers within Command, which we're going to take a look at in just a moment here. I've got to go to Command and share my screen with you, and then we will go through creating an offer in Command so that you can offer comparisons that you can share with your clients And you can also use the data to help improve your future offers through reports and insights. Command is built and designed to do machine learning and to get smarter and smarter with more information that's put in. And it will actually be able to predict the likelihood that an offer is going to get accepted as it becomes more and more mature. You know, it can already do that, but we're going to do a little bit of a demo here. One thing I want to talk about for just a moment is, well, I'm going to wait. You guys know what love letters are as they relate to real estate? Did anyone say yes?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to talk about cover letters and love letters in a minute. But first, we're going to go into Command and see if we can write up an offer and just show you how that's done. Has anyone used Command yet to input a purchase offer?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So any input that you want to provide as we go through this would be great. I'll tell you what, let's just take 5 minutes here and let me get my Command opened up and get into an opportunity that I created. And I'll be back in 5 minutes and share that with you and we'll go through it, okay? Because they only needed 3 minutes. But we'll wait the other 2 in case people are doing other things. Have you guys had Eric Schuster as an instructor in Ignite yet?
No.
Okay. Well, I made Eric Schuster the opportunity in Command. We're going to sell his house and he doesn't even know it. You like that, Chris, don't you?
I do. For those of you who don't know, Eric is our PC coach here. So it's pretty funny. Yes, I do like that. It is funny.
Yeah, I didn't put his real address though. So I'm just using his name.
Put him on a smart plan.
So what I did is I prepared an opportunity, a listing opportunity in Command. And before you can create an opportunity, if you haven't done this, you need to have a contact in there that you can affiliate or associate the opportunity with. So what we've got is a listing opportunity here for our client, Eric Schuster, and his property at 5050 McClenton Road in Manlius, New York. There's some general information in here. You can see I've got the ownership of the opportunity within my command database. The stage is active, and well, the phase is active. The stage is that we're showing the property. Here's the name of our client, our contact. We're estimating at this point that it's going to close July 30th. I had an appointment on the 5th. Well, I scheduled the appointment on the 5th over the telephone, and I went in on the 7th and got the listing agreement signed on the 7th. Other information that we know is that the address of the property is here, which I stated before, and we are offering buyer's agent and seller's agent commission. Whoever brings the buyer, we're offering them 3.5%. And we know that the closing cost for the seller, this really shouldn't be a percentage. I don't know why it is. It's going to be about $1,000 for their title work. And we know that they have a mortgage balance of approximately $150,000. One side of the commission, if it were $300,000, would be $14,875. But all of that is just filling a field at this point. It's more about the process than it is the specific numbers. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to click on offers and commissions. Okay. Now I got to move the screen because it's covering something up. I'm seeing the gallery view here. It's covering up one of the tabs that I need. Thought I could just drag these Zoom screens, Chris.
Say what?
Just trying. Now I can. I got to minimize this. Okay. Can you all see that? Add new offer.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're clicking add new offer. New offer version. We'll create a new version of this offer for you. What would you like to call it? It defaults to initial offer. And I think that we're just going to use that because it's going to help to distinguish it from any counter offers or any other versions that may come of this offer during negotiations, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to create the offer. Here's the offer date, okay? It defaults to today. And we're going to put a closed date. Of 7:30. I think I better type it in because some of the Zoom activity bars are covering up what I can see. Well, here's the last date I can do it. Okay, we'll say it's 31st. So you see this up here? We put some details in. Now we're going to the parties, okay? So the buyer, let's say the buyer is Chris Wing. You didn't know you were going to do this today, did you, Chris?
No, I'm in the market for a house, guys.
Awesome. What's your email address?
Chris Wing at KW.
We'll put the Market Center phone number. I'm not going to put his address right now, but we are going to say that Chris is pre-approved. And we're going to say that Chris has an agent and that the agent's name is the next instructor that you're going to have at Ignite, Tabitha Cleveland.
She's taught a few Ignite classes. She's got one coming up too.
Yeah, I think she's next. And I'm just going to make up a phone number. Okay, so we got to this point and we filled out our information. We know that Eric Schuster is the seller. That's carried over to this screen. The address, we already know. I'm not going to type it in. And it says that I am Eric's agent. And there's my phone number. Now we go to the next screen. And now we're talking about terms, okay? Okay, cash. Let's say that this is a 20% down offer. And then Chris is going to get a $240,000 mortgage. So that's going to make the sale price $300,000, correct? So we put in earnest money. Chris, how much earnest money would you like to put down on this offer?
I really need the house, so we'll say 5,000.
Okay. And that automatically will calculate the percentage of the purchase price that the earnest money deposit amount equates to. In this case, it's 1.67%. We're not putting an option fee in. We really don't use those here. If anybody's using option fees out there, let me know. I'd like to hear about it.
Jeff, I would like to know what is the option fee?
An option fee would be, let's say you put in the offer, here's a $2,000 option fee that the seller can keep if I don't go through with the transaction. I need 3 weeks to do my due diligence. Any inspections, any testing, anything that I want to do to make sure that I want to move forward. That would be an option fee. It's something that's used a lot in Texas. And because Keller Williams is based in Texas, I think that's why it's in here, because it is used in some parts of the country customarily.
Oh, okay, so like a due diligence.
Yeah, exactly. Due diligence period.
Okay.
That's kind of what I equate it to.
Okay.
If Chris were asking for settlement costs or seller concessions because he wanted some extra cash to be able to make repairs or something, if he was asking the seller to contribute, you know, that would go in here as well. Right now, we're going to leave that at 0, but that's where you put it. So now here we are at the agent analysis section, okay? This is where you have the opportunity to kind of show your expertise and give your opinion of the offer to your seller. You can list the pros, list the cons, and you can give a summary, and it will be useful later on because you can email the offer comparison to your client. So it's something that you can use on an ongoing basis to run your business when you're managing offers. So what's positive about this? Someone give me a pro that we can type in.
Offer the full price.
Yeah, right. There you go. That's definitely a pro.
Um,
Anything else?
The $5,000 down?
The earnest money?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna put strong EMD, earnest money deposit.
How about 20% down?
I like it. Now, we didn't write in any contingencies, okay? Well, let's just say that there was something that was a con in here. Today is May 10th. We put that the closing would be about the 31st of July. That's out there, you know, a little bit more than average. So I'm just going to put long time till closing. Maybe an issue. Whoops. Maybe an issue for the seller. And let's also pretend that Chris has his current residence under contract, but not closed. He must close.
So can I ask, when you add that in though, that would have been down as a contingency, but it's not, you didn't have a contingency?
No, I'm making it up right now.
But that would just be a con if it was a contingency in the offer.
It would be, yeah, it would be stated in the offer that the closing is contingent upon, that this closing is contingent upon the closing of Chris's current residence located at 123 Main Street, Syracuse, New York, you know, on or before a certain date. That would definitely be in there, that it's pursuant to that contract. And as Chris's agent, what would happen is Tabitha would be making sure to supply me as the listing agent for Eric's property with strong evidence that that transaction is in good shape. Maybe the buyer already has their mortgage commitment, and at least they've got their pre-approval, their inspections are done. You know, you've got to find out, Tabitha has to find out and convey to me as the listing agent for Eric's property, anything pertinent to that other offer, so I can explain it to Eric and make sure that he's comfortable with it. He may say, you know what, I don't want to have an offer that's contingent on anything closing. There's enough buyers out there where maybe I could sell it to somebody else. But if we have a strong case that that transaction will probably close, then it's okay. So you might want to have a summary here of some remarks or some notes that you want to send to the seller. But all of this is going to be stored in here, and you can refer to it, and you can go back and forth with counteroffers. If you have multiple offers, you can put them all in here, and there's a way that you can kind of compare it side by side to see what looks the best. So when you're done putting in the information, you're going to save it. And you've got this offer timeline here. You can see what some of the bullet points are that are important, and that the status that we're in right now is reviewing. If you had another offer, you would click here and add the new offer. Let's say you go to your seller and, hey, things are looking good. The seller wants to accept this offer and they sign the contract. You hit accept. If they want to reject it, you reject it. If you want to add a negotiation, edit the offer, add analysis, send the offer, remove the offer. You've got all of those options over here. So you can do a lot with the command. It's really great, and it keeps everything in one place. Some people actually like it better than collecting page after page after page after page of hard copies in a file. So you've got to have a hard copy somewhere in your computer, but this is a nice way to stay organized, and it really helps the system to learn, so that as you move forward, like I was saying, it's going to get more and more intelligent as time goes on based on the data that's been put in.
So Jeff, this is not the offer buyer send over, is the listing agent kind of summarize based on that offer received, correct?
Yes, good point. You can also go, if your forms are in Command that you use, or if they're in DocuSign, which is linked to Command, then you can integrate things together. Right now, our forms here are not in DocuSign. Unfortunately, we don't use zip forms like they do in the Capital District. In the Capital District, I think zip forms plays well with Command and DocuSign. Here, we have Instant forms for Lone Wolf, and when we contacted them, we weren't able to bring our forms into DocuSign at the current time. It's something that's being worked on by our local MLS board here. But you're correct. This is a summary at this point. We don't have forms loaded in here that we're sending to the seller.
I also don't see the place we can put in the contingency. What about the offer has a contingency?
I think you can put it in the notes.
Notes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep, definitely.
thanks.
So anyway, this is just showing you how you can keep track of your offers and keep it as part of your contact record and your opportunities in Command. So right now, I'm going to go out of here and I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. So just bear with me for a moment. Page 6 in your participant guide has some offer writing guidelines. And we're going to go over those briefly. Please keep these guidelines in mind and use the checklist that we looked at before as you write the offer. Ensure that your buyer knows that all checks, like earnest money checks, are written at the same time the offer is written and are deposited upon acceptance. This is going to vary a little bit by area. Please check with your team leader for specific guidelines on that. What I can tell you is that if the offer gets accepted, that escrow check needs to go into the bank in a reasonable period of time, and that means as soon as possible. There's a lot of confusion around that. Sometimes agents will hold on to earnest money checks for literally weeks and weeks, and the contract says that you have it in your possession and then it's going to be deposited. It usually doesn't say within 24 hours or something like that, but you should get your earnest money checks turned in as soon as possible once the offer is accepted. I know that during COVID also things changed a little bit because we were doing so many things on Zoom. So instead of maybe having the check physically when the offer was written, a lot of times we would get a text message or an email with a photograph of the check and then get the check from the buyer at the earliest opportunity. You've got to get it into your possession. But many listing agents are going to be looking for a copy of the earnest money check when the offer gets submitted. Something that's really important with earnest money checks and bank statements and things like that is that you should find a way digitally to block out the account number and maybe even the routing number on any documents that are sensitive, that are confidential in nature. There are checks being sent back and forth all the time, digitally, email, text, whatever, without that information blocked out, and there's potential liability there. So it's wise to block those numbers out, and it's very easily done. There's various ways to do it. There's little programs, photo editing programs and things of that nature that you can do it on. Sometimes you'll get a copy of the check and you'll just print it out and you'll take a permanent marker and you'll block out the copy of the account number and all that, and then you'll send it in. So whatever way you need to get it done, please practice safely and keep that confidential information confidential. In command, it says obtain the appropriate offer to purchase forms for your area and add it to the buying opportunity if it's not already included. Ask your MCA for assistance. If you're meeting with someone in person to write an offer, bring your laptop or your tablet with you when you meet with them to review the offer and respond online. If the seller's out of the area, you can still present the offer using command and talk them through it by phone. When your buyer makes an offer, they're basically selling themselves to the homeowner. And they go on here to talk about cover letters, okay? And there's going to be some caution thrown into the wind here when it comes to cover letters. You've probably heard from the chief legal counsel at NYSAR and maybe from your local association of realtors attorney that we should stay away at all costs from love letters. And, you know, the love letter is where somebody might say something like, my buyer clients are a family of 4 and they've been living in the area that they're in now for 5 years. And here's what they love about your house. And here's what they do for a living. And here's blah, 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 blah. You know, it's basically a sales pitch. Now, these things have been used very commonly, and buyers love to write love letters to hopefully humanize their offer and to help get it accepted. The reason that we're told not to get involved in those at this point, not to be a conduit for love letters between buyers and sellers, is that there's a potential there that you could violate fair housing. Some people think that it's really an overreach and that we're trying to be too careful about staying out of trouble. Other people just take the attorney's word for it and say, you know what, if they're telling us not to do this and they're the attorney for our association, we better not be doing it. What I'm going to suggest is that, in my opinion, personally, and I'm only one person, I think it's okay to write a cover letter. I think it's completely professional. I think that you need to make real sure that you're not going anywhere near any protected class issues or anything that could be interpreted as being a fair housing violation. But I see nothing wrong with including the strong points of the offer. I think you could say where the buyer works. I don't think there's a problem with that personally. Somebody might disagree with me. But I think if you keep it neutral and make it sort of like Switzerland, meaning, you know, it's safe for everyone, and that you go ahead and put the strong points of the offer in writing and into a good narrative, I don't see anything wrong with a cover letter. I think it's pretty standard when offers are made and requests for proposals are submitted, you know, in the business world. But just be real careful with that. I've had buyers write letters and I've had them go right around me and deliver it directly to the seller. There's nothing I could do about that. They chose to do it on their own. I didn't tell them to do it. So I don't see how I could have any liability there. In the example that I'm thinking of, the buyer that wrote the letter, they didn't tell me that they were writing a letter, and they mailed it to the seller, and it actually got to the seller before we even wrote and got the purchase offer signed. And I got a call from the listing agent saying, my seller just called me and they got this letter from your buyer and they want to know how much the buyer's going to lowball them because the buyers were going on and on about how much they love the house and we hope you'll accept our offer. The seller interpreted that as being, okay, they're going to come in low. And that's what they did. And it actually worked against them. We got the deal done in the end, but the seller really kind of took a burn that they tried to sweet talk their way into getting him and his wife to take a lower offer. And it wasn't helpful at all. So it was kind of interesting, you know, to see that happen. But I didn't know anything about it until after it happened. So what could I do? So be careful with these letters. And I would say follow the advice of your leadership, follow the advice of the attorneys, keep yourself out of real estate jail and real estate fines that would be handed down by the Department of State. But they recommend in the Ignite materials that you write a short profile of the buyers and that these activities help to foster a personal connection between the seller and the buyer and increase the chances that the buyer's offer will be the one that's accepted. This is general. It's a national training program. We're in New York State, so sometimes different rules apply when you're driving down the real estate highway in New York than they might in Texas or Minnesota or whatever state you want to pick, right? So if you create a buying opportunity and an offer in command, when you meet with your client, they can review and they can e-sign the offer directly on your laptop or your tablet. If they're out of town, of course, all they need is internet access, or even they can do it on their phone to be able to sign in AuthentiSign or DocuSign or whatever digital signing program that you're using. So you make sure that everything's accurate and you get all that stuff in. This talks about these cover letters again. Now, what they're suggesting here is thanking the seller for taking time to review the purchase offer, thanking the realtor, provide a brief description of the clients making the offer. I think that's where you have to be careful. Explain why the clients are attracted to the property. I don't really see anything wrong with that. Describe your client's plans for the property after the purchase. I think some of that could be okay. Thank you for your time. We look forward to working with you on your sale of your home. So if you just stick to facts and stick to things that are substantive to the offer, you should be fine if you are using a cover letter. Page 7 of the participant guide actually has what's on this slide as a template for you to use. And there's a place that you can write some notes down at the bottom if you feel like you want to modify that letter to kind of make it your own. So we're going to do a role play here. There's 2 common objections that are listed on page 8 of your participant guide. It's very common for buyers to want to request that the seller make repairs in their offer. This objection handler script will allow you to give your client some information to make an informed decision about repairs they request when making their initial offer. When clients want to make a really low offer right out of the gate, like the one I just described with my clients, you'll want to make sure that they know the possible repercussions of making such a low offer. So Chris, if you could help out by breaking people into pairs, if possible. I think we have an even number right now, so that should work out okay. Take turns using the scripts on page 8 for overcoming common objections to writing offers. And we're just going to take about 5 minutes to do this. So if you can go through those and try to switch roles so everybody gets a chance to be on each side of the table, then we'll come back and we will talk about this for a few minutes. Chris, you there?
Yep, I'm breaking them out now.
Thank you so much. I can only see a few people's names and faces, so that's why I called out.
There we go. They should be breaking out now. I may have, because you're co-host, it'll try to put you in a room, but you don't have to try if you don't want to.
Okay. So we will come back at about 10:18. Bill's not in a room yet.
I'll get him in a room, Bill.
It's okay if they're in threes. They might need
Yeah.
a few more minutes.
Yep.
They might need just a couple more minutes so everyone gets a turn. I'm still seeing Bill.
Yeah, I put him into, tried to put him in the room. Sometimes they don't, it's weird. I know there was another agent who was on. He's unable to speak too, can't join a room.
I just put him in room 2.
Yeah,
Still says not joined.
yeah. There was another person that was on past couple of times. She would get on, would go to Twitter in a room, and for whatever reason, she couldn't get pushed into a room. Like she wouldn't join. I would move her to different rooms. She'd log out, log on. Eventually, she was able to. She had to log out of Zoom, log back in, and then she was able to get in. But it took quite a few tries. For
I'll
whatever.
tell you what, Bill, can you hear me? If you unmute yourself, I can be your partner and we can do this together, because we can't seem to put you into a breakout room.
In the chat, it says he's unable to speak. So. Yeah, in the chat, it says he's unable to speak. So I don't know if he's got microphone issues.
Oh, but yeah, I'm asking him to unmute, but it's not happening. Strange. Well, Bill, I'm sorry. It seems like we have you in jail here somehow through Zoom. I don't know what's going on. Chris, do you think if we put Bill in the waiting room and then have him rejoin, then it might work?
It might.
Let me try
Try
this. Let me try it. All right, I just put him in the waiting room. I'm going to admit him. Still muted though. Very strange.
What's the deal on the 1 cup Keurigs? Is there like a pot that we pitch in for? Does the office buy it? Does that belong to a person?
No, it's the office normally buys them. Are we out?
What's that?
Are we? The office normally buys them. Are we?
Hey, Joe, I'll take a coffee with cream only, please.
Joe says he's got you. He's going to deliver your coffee.
Thank you, Joe. We'll give them one more minute, 10, 20. Everybody back? Well, most or all of you were in groups of
That's
three,
the thing.
so we gave you an extra couple minutes, hoping that everybody would get a turn.
I know, it's okay.
How'd you all do with
Good.
the exercise?
Well, Kaylee's gonna buy the house at full price offer. She's sick of looking.
We're getting it.
Jeff, I have a question going back to the earnest money deposit. So that first bullet point says checks are written at the same time. Are you saying you get copies of their blank check from the buyer? I'm not sure I understand the earnest money deposit and when to get a check.
Okay, are you speaking as a listing agent or as the buyer's agent?
The buyer's agent.
Yeah, when the offer is written, that's when you're supposed to get the check.
So actually filled out and then take a copy of it, or have them send you a copy of it and send it with the offer? Is that what you're saying?
That's the way it's commonly done, yes. Especially during COVID-19, because we weren't meeting face-to-face very much to write the purchase offer. It was usually being done, after a Zoom conversation or just being done electronically. And the contract states that you have an earnest money deposit in your possession. So even if you don't have it at 8 o'clock at night and you're submitting the offer, you could at least get an image of the check from your buyer client and then black out the confidential information and use that copy to send along with the offer, and then make arrangements with the buyer client to drop the check at the market center, or you pick it up.
Okay,
However, you can get it as soon as possible in your possession.
okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, I've only done one listing, and out of the 8 offers, I didn't get any copies of checks. So I was just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, and it may vary. Where are you? Are you in Rochester?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe it's done differently there. Here in Syracuse, there's an expectation when an offer comes in that a copy of the earnest money check is with everything else.
I like that. I think I don't know. I like that idea.
Yeah,
If I have a question,
sure.
who do they make the check out to?
You should ask your team leader or your MCA about that. I can answer for Syracuse. If I'm representing a buyer as a buyer's agent and my buyer client is writing an offer, the check 99% of the time is going to be made out to Keller Williams Syracuse, and we hold the earnest money. There are other marketplaces where, let's say, you're showing a Remax listing, and it might be customary in that marketplace that the listing agent's brokerage holds the escrow, so then it would be written to Remax.
Yeah, I
So you
know.
have to find out from your leadership in your market center, what's commonly done in your area, and then you'll know what to do.
I know here in Rochester, I mean, at least out of the Brighton office, it was Keller Williams, Greater Rochester
Okay.
Realty.
So it sounds like the buyer agent's brokerage holds the earnest money in most cases then, right?
The capital region, the listing agent or listing attorney tend to hold it.
See, there you go. It differs in different parts of the state. We're all part of Keller Williams, New York Upstate region, but there's local custom.
Yeah, here it was the seller, because I was the seller. I was the listing agent.
Oh, okay. And where was the other agent from?
Rochester as well.
What company, though?
Howard Hanna.
Oh, okay, great. So they're writing it to the listing broker then. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the same as Capital District is what it sounds like. And, as usual, we do things different in Syracuse, right? But there's other things that, differ as well, depending on the local marketplace. Like, for example, 30 minutes from here, I don't know if you've ever been to the Turning Stone Casino or not, but it's about half an hour from where our market center is. And that area is Oneida County, right? In Oneida County, it's not customary for a seller to provide an updated survey. In Syracuse, it's expected. So there's little things that differ, here and there, not just earnest money, but other ways of doing business, title work, other things. So local custom comes into play all the time.
Okay.
And you just learn about these things by listening to others, and you learn by doing and having those experiences. So back to the handling buyer objections breakout that you just did. Any comments on either one of the scripts? Any thoughts? Any ahas? Anything come out of that anyone wants to share?
We went through the script, but we acknowledged that with homes going so far over asking price, it really becomes a moot point. So when I'm showing a house, I say to my buyers, anything you find, anything that comes up during the inspection over $1,500, we will revisit, and we can ask the sellers to pay to fix it. We can reduce our price, or we can ask to split the cost with the sellers. But in today's market, when homes are going, 30,000 plus over asking, there really is no motivation for the seller. They just will move on to another offer.
That's right. And with any of these things that we're learning, some of them are going to be applicable more in certain market conditions than they are in others. So just keep that in mind as we go through. So good point. I appreciate you bringing that up. So now we've got a written offer, right? Next step is presenting the offer. So we're going to review how to present an offer as a buyer agent, and also how to receive an offer as a seller agent. So presenting the offer to the listing agent. Notify the agent of the incoming offer. Send the offer to the agent. Possibly set a deadline. Create the offer in command and consult with your buyer when the seller responds. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time it is. For the first few offers that you write, it's probably very good advice to have your team leader, productivity coach, if you have one in your market center, maybe someone that's on your ALC or Associate Leadership Council or mentor, look them over and review them before submitting them to the listing agent. That way you'll make sure that, like we talked about before, you've got completeness, you've got accuracy, and that you're going to be sending an offer in that's very professional. The presentation of the offer can be just as important as the contents of the offer. So step one is your opportunity to describe your clients, mention your cover letter if you're using one, and let the listing agent know that you have an offer for their client. Sometimes, very commonly in today's market, there's going to be a deadline. Different agents handle it different ways. Some agents don't have any deadline for offers when they first put the listing into the system. They might wait to see how much activity they get And if they look like they're getting into a multiple offer situation, or if they receive more than one offer, they may then consult with their seller and set a deadline by which offers have to be submitted, hopefully best and final offers. So doing these things in a timely manner is important. Like we said before, customer service is important, and the customer always comes first. Once you've presented the offer, the ball is really in the seller's court. So make sure that, this is going to sound, once again, kind of common sense, duh, but you're going to want to make sure that you're in touch. You've got to make sure your cell phone is on. You've got to make sure your notifications are on. You don't want to miss a call or a notification from the seller's agent. And sometimes things happen really quickly, and it could be time sensitive and something that you need to respond to right away. So presenting the offer. The call that you would make to notify a seller's agent of an offer. You're going to make sure to include details about a hypothetical buyer and maybe their motivation for buying. You can find a script for presenting the offer on page 21 of the Elementals script book. And I'm just going to take a quick look at that right now, so we can refer to it. And when you get into the negotiation class, you're going to be learning about counter tactics and things like that. For some reason, oh, I got it now. So rather than go into breakout groups, let's just work on this together. And some of you can definitely chime in, but we do want to review this just to make sure. So what if a low offer comes in? You know, you're the listing agent and a low ball offer comes in. How do you handle that? They're suggesting in the script book that you should never criticize or show a negative attitude about a low offer. Present all points of agreement first before discussing price or other disagreements. Now, this offer is lower than your asking price. I know that, and you may not be happy with it, but it's an offer. So let's decide what you would like to do. I know that in today's market, we're not seeing a lot of that because buyers know it's pointless most times to come in low. They're just not going to get the property. But in what I would call a typical balanced market, or especially in a buyer's market, this scenario happens a lot. And, you know, the seller's tendency is to just focus on price and to start to get an emotional reaction to it and to kind of dig their heels in. And that low offer can actually work against the buyer. The seller, many times, is just going to feel like the buyer's bottom fishing and they're just trying to find out if they can steal my property. Maybe they're not really sincere about buying it. You know what? I don't want to sell to them. That's what you want to try to prevent. They're suggesting here, focus on other things besides the price and then get down to the price and try to get a counter offer from your seller in that scenario to keep the ball rolling. Because a lot of times if the low offer comes in, the seller just says no, then nothing else happens. And you're looking for another buyer when in fact that transaction might come together. Maybe it's a firm counter offer from the seller to really send a message to the buyer that, look, I'm willing to work with you, but you've got to get into the same ballpark as we're playing this game. You know, you're way out of it right now. So I'll come down by $1,000. And then if the buyer doesn't make a big move, then you know that it's probably not going to happen and that they're not serious. But the thing is to try to keep positive, you know, don't fly off the handle and start screaming at the other agent and say, what are you thinking? You know, don't do things like that. Just stay professional and be the even keel, you know, be the even hand in the situation to try to keep people going, to get everyone to the finish line. The second scenario is recommending that your client accept the offer. I will urge you to consider this offer very carefully. This is the agent talking, and consider the value of meeting your moving goals. In the long run, meeting your overall goal of selling your home is more critical need, right? Is the most critical need. Your property has now been on the market for 15 days. Average time on the market right now is 7 days. Buyers are going to be looking at the same data that we are. They're going to see that your neighbor's house only sold for $370 and the house around the corner sold for $350. They're going to want to pay a fair market value compared to these other sales. And we're looking at an offer now that's right in that ballpark and it's supported by the comparables. So if you accept this offer, the probability of closing and moving on and meeting your goal is 100%. You want to meet your goal, don't you? We're correct, we're right. So you're helping to guide the seller that might be tied to a number that's slightly unrealistic to look at the evidence that this offer that's in front of them, that you're presenting to them, is definitely in the ballpark, and it's something they should be considering very strongly accepting. Third scenario is you're recommending that your client make a counteroffer. And the language that they suggest in your script book is, we look at any offer as a positive thing, really. We always recommend a counteroffer instead of rejecting an offer outright. It might be that we can negotiate this up to where we need to be. Let's put together a solid counteroffer. Let's get back to them quickly and keep things rolling and see if we can make this offer work. I think the thing to focus on here is the price that you want to get for your home. Putting this offer aside, if you could get the home sold and closed within 30 days, would you feel comfortable selling it today? And how much would that be for? Let's put together a counteroffer that'll put us in the range where you feel comfortable. So you're being diplomatic, you're negotiating, you're trying to keep this thing going. And they also say, remember, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, not all offers are going to work, but it's a good sign that we're getting an offer. You've made this person's list as a house that they thought was going to be one of the best homes for the money. I'll call the other agent and ask them how they came up with the price that they're offering. And that could be a very effective thing to do, to try to find out what their rationale is. You may find out from the agent that's representing the buyer that, you know what, I showed my buyer the comparables and this is their price. It's not mine. You might hear that at some point.
It's funny you say that, Jeff, because I'm looking at a property for someone and it's list 3 years ago, it was sold for, I think, $125, and now they're listing this cabin in the wood for $325.
Wow.
In 3 years, and from the previous listing to the current listing, I don't really see much of an upgrade.
Interesting. So they're just trying to capitalize on the market conditions and, hope they hit a home run, I guess.
Right.
So on page 22 in your script guide, there's another one. It's on presenting a counteroffer to the buyer agent. I'd like to ask for a volunteer to read through that for everybody else in the group here. Anybody want to take it? It's presenting a counteroffer to the buyer agent. You could use my name, Jeff Roney, if you want. I'm the buyer's agent. You're the listing agent coming back to me.
I'll do it, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Jeff. This is Elizabeth Page with Keller Williams, and I wanted to thank you for your offer.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, of course. We appreciate it. I got to tell you, it was quite a bit lower than what the seller had hoped.
I see. It really wasn't what I was hoping to hear. The buyer felt pretty good about the offer when they made it, based on the comparable sales and what else they've been seeing out there in the marketplace.
Okay. Well, the sellers have come back with a reasonable counteroffer that should work. The seller's countering back for $500,000. And the rest of the terms in your offer are fine, except for the blah, blah, blah. This is something that will work for everybody. Your buyer's getting a home within market. The price, the seller is selling at a reasonable price, and we can all move forward to get this closed. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree that I would love to get this closed, and I do think that this is a house that the buyers are seriously interested in. As far as the price goes, I appreciate the counteroffer that you've given me. And, I understand that our initial offer is really less than what the seller is looking for. Let me go back and consult with the buyer. And I'll get back to you just as soon as possible with a response to the counteroffer, okay?
That sounds great, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
My pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
So I like in that script how they use the word reasonable, you know, let's get to the finish line. Let's be reasonable. Let's have a fair price. I think it's good. It's good language. It's professional. It's not offensive in any way. It's not going to stir up a lot of emotions. It's business. It's business-like. And I think that's a good thing. So we're going to talk now about representing the seller during an offer and your role as the listing agent. One thing that you have is you've got a duty to understand the offer that you're receiving so you can accurately present it to the seller. And obviously the goal with any offer is to come to an agreement that's going to satisfy both parties. We're always striving for a win-win. It's difficult in purchase offer presentation and negotiations when someone really just wants to win. They want to dig their heels in. They want to feel like they've walked away with a victory and they've beat the other side up a little bit. When people understand that when you get something together and a negotiation is successful, everybody wins, that's very helpful in terms of a mindset. So as a listing agent, you do in your participant guide have this checklist for reviewing an offer, just like you have a checklist for writing an offer when you're a buyer's agent. First and foremost, definitely thank the buyer agent for the offer. Thanking somebody for presenting and bringing an offer is a small thing that'll help you, and it will go a long way in your experience with the buyer's agent. And it'll help to build those relationships in the marketplace with active agents that you may be doing business with over and over again. As the listing agent, you will want to learn as much as you can about the buyer and their offer as is possible. So that checklist on page 10 is going to give you some questions that you can go ahead and you can ask in order to try to get as much information as possible to take back and discuss and review with your seller. These are things like, how long has the buyer been looking for a property? Which lender is their pre-approval from? Make sure that they've included a letter when they send you the offer. Do they have a home to sell? You know, are they coming in from out of town? Why are they moving to the area? That could be interesting information. We saw so many people during COVID that were leaving areas like New York City and coming into Onondaga County here near Syracuse because maybe they were from here originally and COVID finally was just what pushed them out of the city. Maybe they wanted to get closer to family. They started working remotely and realized they could work from anywhere, and they wanted a little bit more space and green grass to run around on than they were getting down in New York. A lot of buyers like that, I'm sure, came to Rochester too. What did they like about this property? Why did they select it? How did they come up with their offer price? You know, what's the rationale behind the offer that they're making? Just curious, have they made offers on any other properties, or is this the first one? And you know, what happened during those negotiations? Did they have an opportunity to buy one of those other properties, or were they just constantly getting beaten out? So the more you know about the buyer, the better you are prepared, and the better you can inform your seller to help them know what might be a proper response to the offer. Maybe they love everything about it and they just take it. But if it's a counteroffer situation, the more knowledge you have, I think the better job you'll be able to do along with your seller of preparing and presenting a counteroffer to take back. When it comes to presenting the offer, let's say you've received an offer from the buyer's agent and that you've reviewed this offer to make sure that there's no questions or surprises. Now you're going to take it to your client. Make sure you give your clients as much detail as you can about the potential buyers and their offer as possible. You're going to contact your client, of course, and let them know that you've got an offer to present, and you're going to inform them of the offer price and of the closing date and anything else that's relevant. It's suggested in your materials that if possible, to present the offer to your client in person. This is happening less and less because of technology, and less and less and less and less because of COVID-19, but it still does happen. I find that if I'm dealing with, let's say, the baby boomer generation, that a lot of times they do want to meet and talk about it because that's the way that they're used to doing business. But it all depends on the person. It's an individual type of thing. When you meet with your client, make sure that you've either got hard copies with you that they can sign or initial, or just bring your laptop or your tablet with you so that it can be responded to online. And you can still obviously get an offer signed from anywhere, via the internet through one of the electronic signature programs. Keep the tone of the conversation as positive as possible and never criticize the buyer, their agent, their brokerage, or their offer. Explain the offer, discuss the days on the market, know what the competition is for your listing and for your sellers out there in the marketplace. Know how many showings you've had, have feedback aggregated in showing time or somewhere else. Maybe it's in your notes in command so that you can review feedback with them if there's been multiple showings and now all of a sudden you're seeing a first or second offer. And review an updated CMA to put the offer in perspective for your client. There may have been things that happened since you did your previous CMA, and the market may have changed a little bit. Maybe it's still going up like it has been. Yesterday I was reviewing stats on a listing appointment, and here in Onondaga County, we've had like 15.8% increase in the average price in the last 15 months. In Rochester, it may be more. It may be less. I don't know. I haven't studied the Rochester stats, but knowing these things and having supporting documentation can really help you and your seller decide how to respond to an offer. And it's going to help to give your client perspective. On page 21 in your script book that I think we looked at before, you've got the scripts on presenting an offer. So you can refer to those, practice those, make them your own, get comfortable with the language. And before you know it, as they said in the old days, it's just like riding a bike. You get really used to doing it and you become more and more proficient at it all the time as you go along. It is right now 10:47, and we've been at this for about an hour and 50 minutes. Why don't we take a break until 11 o'clock and then come back and we'll head for the finish line here and get things wrapped up. That way you can go get a drink, grab something to eat, do whatever you need to do. Let's come back at 11. Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. See you in a little bit more than 10 minutes. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. People should be coming back here, I think. So where we are now is respond to the offer, right? An offer's been presented, and it's now the seller's agent or the listing agent's turn to consult with their client and respond to the offer. Earlier, we talked about the fact that there's really 3 ways to respond to an offer. Who wants to take this? What are the 3 ways that can be responded? Or the 3 ways that a seller can respond?
Accept, reject, or change counteroffer.
Bingo. Good job. You were listening.
I was
That's awesome.
listening.
Okay, here we go again with my frozen PowerPoint. We'll get it back. All right, we're back. So reaching a decision. As the seller's agent, it's really your job, it's your duty, your professional obligation to help your client come to a decision about how they'd like to proceed with the offer from this point on. You've examined the offer, you've explained the positives and the negatives, you've done a great job up to this point, getting as much information as you can to help your client make a decision. So that first choice that was just mentioned is accept the offer, right? If the offer is reasonable, they may take it as written on the spot, or they may sign it electronically immediately, and remind the seller that once they accept the offer, within the terms and conditions and timelines on that contract, if everything comes together, their property is sold at that point. Anything else that comes in is going to be a backup in most cases. There is, and I think it's important to note that there is, the law in New York State says that an attorney can reject a contract for any reason, and they don't have to say what it is. And you may run into it, especially in a competitive market where, let's say you've got a buyer client, they presented an offer, the seller has signed it, maybe there's a clause in there saying that the attorney has 3 days to review it, and a day or 2 after your offer was signed, another offer comes in. Some sellers will say, you know what, those people were first, I'm going with their offer, I'm a person of my word. There are other sellers that will say, well, I received a second offer that actually is $5,000 more than your offer. And rather than have my attorney reject that offer, your offer, I'm going to give you a chance to match it. And the buyer might say yes, they might say no. The third scenario is, the same thing happens and a seller just says to their attorney, disapprove the first contract. I'm going with the second one, it's for more money. That really stings when you've already got a signed offer. And thankfully, at least in my own experience, it hasn't happened a lot, but it has happened, occasionally where an attorney will kill a deal based on their client's instruction. And, you might be representing somebody that's on the short end of the stick. I hate it when that happens, but I'm just bringing it up because it is something that you might encounter at some point on both sides. Your seller client, you're the listing agent. Your seller client may receive a second offer that's higher. They need to know what their options are. And it really depends on how they like to do business and what they're going to do moving forward from there. But a lot of people are shocked to find out that an attorney can kill it for any reason. All they have to write is a little letter saying that they disapprove the contract, and that's it. It's done. Second choice, counter the offer. Consult with your client to determine a reasonable counteroffer amount or terms. Write that counteroffer on the contract or prepare a counteroffer form and have the seller initial it. I do think that when you're making counteroffers, it might take a little bit more time. I personally believe in doing them in writing. A lot of agents do them verbally, just to kind of save time and try to cut to the chase. I like getting a written counteroffer because when it goes back to the other people, they know if they sign it, it's a deal. Sometimes when things are verbal, there's a verbal exchange, there's misunderstandings, and things can change, and people can do something different than what they said they would do before. So I'm a big believer in getting it in writing whenever possible. Explain to your seller that when they make a counteroffer, they're basically rejecting the initial offer because they're changing any aspect of it. So when is it a good idea to counter, and when is it not a good idea to counter? You know, what are the risks of haggling over small things, you know, like $500, $700, maybe a minor repair? What are your thoughts on that? Anybody have any opinions? Do you think it's always worth it to make a counteroffer?
No.
Why is your answer no?
Well, because like you're saying, you know, a lot of small things or little things could turn off a buyer and you could lose a buyer. And obviously in this market, nobody's countering anything. They're just accepting whichever offer, you know, is best for them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree 100%. I mean, in this market, you know, all the rules are different than they would be in another market, of course. But sometimes just splitting hairs and nitpicking over little things, it just gets in the way, you know, of making the transaction. It's like not being able to see the forest for the trees, as they say. You want to win the big picture. One little battle over one small thing may not be worth it, and sometimes it's just a good idea to sign the offer and get it done rather than countering over something that's relatively insignificant. Rejecting the offer, we talked about this before. If the offer is unreasonable, the seller might reject it. The seller may or may not decide to invite the buyer to submit a new offer. You know, sometimes they get really insulted and they just say, I don't want to sell to this person. And, you know, you try to calm them down and say, look, you know, they made an offer for whatever reason. You know, maybe they were coached by a friend or a relative that you never come in too high because you can never go down. You should always start low and come up. People have all kinds of beliefs about these things, and sometimes they're influenced from other people. If they do make a low offer, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It's just a business transaction, and maybe you can get them to come back with a new offer. The seller sometimes will reject it and just say, you know, I'm done with them. Let's keep going. As the status of your offers change and you're tracking them in Command, you can update Command. And if you need directions on how to manage an offer, you can always go to the website answers.kw.com. There's all kinds of great information there that will help you with questions that you've got about Command. And if your market center uses Scott Leroy Marketing, for instance, which our market center does, they're very good at teaching and training and answering questions. They're reachable by phone, they're reachable by email, and they've got a great YouTube channel and a great website with all kinds of training. So there's a lot of resources when it comes to training. Also, you might have a technology trainer in your market center, or you might have an agent services director that's very adept at Command, or someone else that's very good at it. They can answer questions or show you something one-on-one right in the office.
Jeff, I have a question, and
Sure.
this goes out to both you and Chris. For new agents, is there, like, I'll call it a test listing? If I was a buyer agent, to practice submitting an offer, doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing through Command, or submitting an offer for a house for my buyer?
See, you want to practice.
I want to practice. So how can I practice submitting an offer, like, and maybe with my mentor, you know, her bouncing back maybe on a test listing? Is there something like that available?
Yeah, I think you can definitely do it. You know, if you've got an accountability partner, or like you say, a mentor or someone else in your market center, just say, you know what, I wanna write an offer on a mock listing, or I can write an offer on a real listing, you know, that you might have, even though it's not a legit offer, it's just for practice.
Right.
And I think you can go through the entire process that we've gone through today, and you can practice your use of the forms and your accuracy and your completeness, and you can talk with them and go through the offer and the terms and conditions and have them role play with you and go back and forth. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Okay, I'll check with my mentor to see if she has a listing I could do that with.
Yeah, and if she doesn't, somebody else will, or you could just make it up. I mean, you could pick something that's closed in the system that sold 6 months ago. It really doesn't matter. It's more about the process and
Oh,
getting comfortable with the process and the language and, the order of events.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds great. So on page 15 of your participant guide, there are some more scenarios here. Once you and your client have decided how to proceed based on the offer you've received, you'll need to respond to the buyer agent. You're going to want to notify the buyer agent of your seller's decision. If you're presenting a counteroffer, then prepare the document in command and present it in person if possible. Request a reply within 24 to 48 hours or whatever is customary in your marketplace. And if the buyer accepts the counteroffer, make sure that you get it back signed, okay? Nothing is a deal until it's signed and a copy has been delivered to all parties. That is the law. So if somebody says, hey, I accept your offer, you need to get a contract back. All parties need to get a copy of it. Once both parties have signed the contract, then get the contract, get the earnest money check if it's coming to you, or make sure that you've got a copy of it if the buyer's agent is going to be depositing it in their escrow. The buyer agent may deliver the earnest money check to the closing company or put it into an escrow account. You're going to, once again, just check with your team leader and your leadership on how to handle these things in your area and in your marketplace. We're going to do one more 5-minute activity around this script on page 15. Chris, if you could split everyone up into ideally pairs, we'll take 5 minutes to work on this script for presenting a counteroffer to buyer's agent. And you'll go through the script and see if you can get them to agree with you. And you're basically just working the offer. One person will be the agent, one person will be the buyer or the seller. If you have time to switch, that would be ideal. It's not a long script. It shouldn't take very long. You should be able to switch easily and just complete the offer to purchase form that your instructor has given you and take turns presenting the offer as a buyer agent and then as a seller agent. So you can just make something up. It's easy enough to do on the fly.
All right, setting up the rooms now.
Thank you, Chris. And then when you come back, we'll talk about it as well as anything else that you'd like to talk about from this class. And we'll talk a little bit more about your daily activities. And then we're going to wrap things up. So it's going to be an open forum at the end if you guys have questions or thoughts about really anything at all. But let's do this exercise first. Thank you.
Oops, I accidentally came back here. I was in breakout room 1 with Kaylee. Would you mind putting me back there?
Me as well. It said it was ending.
Oh, all breakout rooms. Oh,
Yeah. Kaylee and I were in a
let me
room together.
redo it. Yeah, it's for some reason they're ending.
What
I don't
happened?
know. Huh,
I thought it was me. I'm like,
I'll
what did I do?
I'll resend you all in.
Thank
There's
you.
no way to cancel it. Interesting. I don't know if I hit something. I'll do it again. Well, at least it wasn't like last week. Jeff, we were on last week and all of Zoom like completely just shut off. Like my whole thing just shut off.
Heard about that.
Yeah, that was strange.
It was yeah. Going back in.
My car.
So yeah, last week everything like it even closed out of my browser. Like it was
I think
gone.
I got kicked out of my room.
Yeah, I'm sending you all back in. Is that-
Yep.
What? Olivia, did you get a invite into a room?
No.
Oh, weird. Okay, let me try to move you.
Okay, cool.
There we go. Odd. So some people.
Sabine, I didn't get an invite either. I think
Yeah,
a
that's
lot of
weird.
people are
Yeah,
still
there's
getting
one
invites.
room that nobody got an invite to. Odd. I've never had this one happen. This is new.
I'm used to not being invited to things. It's pretty normal.
No.
Go. Odd.
I was invited.
There you go. This is weird. I've never had this happen.
It seems like people keep popping back in to this room.
Yeah, but no, they're saying they never got an invite.
Okay.
They got separated out, but they never got. And Leo is, we can put him up in room 2. Yeah, I've never had that happen to where they didn't get the invite. It says they're like waiting to join. It's weird. Zoom. It's like you learn something new with it almost every day, or you experience something out of the ordinary.
So Leo is still here, Josh and Bill.
Josh, were you able to get into a room?
Leo and I were in a room together and then they sent us back. But if I'm being completely honest with you, I'm going to be at a showing in 5 minutes.
Oh, all
So
right.
it might be better to set Leo up with somebody else.
All right. Let me try to move him. Again, we're having issues with some people getting moved to rooms. Leo, let me get you switched.
There's somebody alone in 6.
Yeah.
Sorry to abandon you, Leo. I'll see you tomorrow, buddy.
Oh no, there's 2 people in there.
Yeah, I just sent him over to 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I just sent you over to room 6 if you can try to join. Weird.
I don't see an invite.
Oh, this is odd. That's just so weird.
Leo, you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can.
Josh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You're the one who was on the way to a showing though, right?
No, Josh is. Yeah.
Oh. Josh.
6, I got the invite.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Josh is on his way to a showing.
Okay.
Yeah, he's logging off. And then Bill, I don't think is having audio.
The Zoom gremlins are at it again.
I mean, Friday, that was crazy. Because I mean, like I said, it completely, I mean, my whole browser closed out.
Maybe it was overloaded completely.
Yeah, I've never, and then I was like, oh, and then people were emailing, like, what do we do? Like, I'm trying to log back. I'm trying to like open Zoom all the way back up. Well,
Well, thanks for your assistance here today, Chris.
Yeah, yeah, I've been pulled in a few different directions. I've had to vanish a few times, but answering phones and we were having internet issues with certain computers here today too. I know Maya's kept the one in the office where she couldn't, hers kept crashing. And then we had a couple agents. We had one come in and she said the internet was going down on the desktops in the back. And then I think we had another one come in and he was like, man, I'm having some internet issues. So I don't know what's going on. This computer is working fine. Maya said when she went into hers, it was working. So we've
And
got,
it's only Monday and it's not even noon yet.
I know. We got, she's been on the phone with Chris, the tech. So we'll see what happens. But we've been having, as you know, we've been having internet issues, especially with like where Kiara's office was and that Maya's been in. We've been having internet issues there. Anybody that gets on it, it's very spotty. But now it seems like it's being spotty throughout the building. So I'm going to stay right here on this computer and be safe.
Safe zone. I woke up at 3:47 a.m. today, and I could not go back to sleep.
Oh,
That's it. I'm in much better shape than I was Friday. I was like an invalid for 3 days last week. Then I went to an acute orthopedic injury after hours walk-in at SOS Bones on Friday night. They x-rayed me and examined me. And they put me on a steroid and, for 6 days or 7 days. And it was like 100% better the next day.
man. So
now
what did you do?
I'm not positive, to be honest.
What is it? Your knee, your back? What was it? Your knee?
They think it's coming from the back, following a nerve pathway, causing all kinds of inflammation and pain in the groin and hip area.
So, you probably have sciatica. Does
Maybe
it
some
feel like a
version
sharp,
of it.
does it feel like a sharp pain?
Well, not today, but I was in a lot of pain. I mean, I was using a walker. I was like an invalid. I couldn't even move.
Yep.
So now I got to go to physical therapy and see if they can help prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, that's what ended. I didn't know this, but I was young when I did mine, but I hurt my back pretty bad. And I didn't know it, but I thought I had pulled a hamstring. I really thought that's what I did. I was in my early 20, maybe 20. I thought it was a pulled hamstring and I had an inflamed disc in my back that was hitting my nerve, my sciatic nerve.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. I thought it was a pulled hamstring. And I just kept going on with it until I was early 30s, to where, I ended up going to a doctor thinking, man, this nagging hamstring issue is, and how I actually found out that it was my sciatic nerve is I was in a bar at UNC and their neuro school was having a graduation party at the bar I was hanging out at. So all these neuro grads were out drinking and partying because they're, all happy, right? They're ass or whatever. And I was just sitting there talking. I was like, yeah, pulled hamstring, blah, blah, blah. We're just shooting the crap. And they were like, no, you have sciatic pain. You probably need to go see a doctor. Like, oh. So yeah, but it got to the point where I could barely walk. By the time it was bad. I couldn't, I know the pain, it sucks. And they put me on a steroid. I was on a steroid for month and a half, 2 months. It was a lot of pain meds.
I'm going to close the rooms.
Yeah. But
did you have surgery?
No. So being how young I was, they were like, look, we cut you open. You'll be back and you'll be back. You're just too young and active to. So
I'm glad you didn't have to have that.
Physical therapy is what I did. And so but man, the steroid that I was on was, whew, it helped a ton.
Yeah, those steroids can actually make you feel better than you really are.
Oh yeah, that was the other. Yep.
They mask things,
Yep. And that was the other issue, is where he was, my neurosurgeon was like, look, we can only keep you on for so long. One, it's not good for you, but two, he was like, it'll mask the pain, and we need to know. He's like, when you hurt, that's the sign that your body is saying, hey, something's wrong, fix me. So, but through physical therapy, I was about 6-8 months of physical therapy. Before
Chris, from what?
I had a back injury back, I don't know, 8-9 years ago. I had double sciatica. I could barely walk. I had no feeling in my legs for a little while. That was bad.
Did you fall down? Did you get hit or something?
Did it playing soccer, believe it or not.
Oh.
I did it when it was in my early 20s, and I thought I pulled a hamstring. Really is what I thought. And I was experiencing sciatica. No idea. It was back pain. It was sharp pain down my lower leg, or down my backs and my legs. And
I've fallen down a lot. I've broken a lot of bones.
Well, welcome back, everybody. How'd you guys do with the script practice?
Good.
Good. We've covered a lot of ground today, and we've obviously looked at how to represent both a buyer and a seller through the offer process. Let's talk a little bit about the overall class and what thoughts and ideas you might have after attending the class today that might be different than what you were thinking about before. Any perception changes out there, any takeaways, any thoughts about this whole offer process, or questions, things that are not clear. Please feel free to weigh in.
Jeff, I actually have a question that I wanted to ask earlier with regard to presenting offers to listing agents.
Yes.
I was in a class with my team at Keller Williams Capital District, and it was actually a shareholders meeting, and they put a panel up of people that were discussing this. And I wondered if you could add to this at all. They were talking about actually putting together an email, a very organized email, and it was almost like the most organized person wins. And it just outlined, here's what we have, like a summary of what is in the offer. And I did that with a client who there were like 15 offers, and we came in second. And the only reason we lost the offer was because the other agent, the other buyer just decided to forgo all inspections, and we couldn't compete with that.
Yeah.
So I wondered if you have any advice on putting together not a cover letter, but I guess it would be like a cover letter, but it wouldn't be to the seller, it would be to the listing agent, of a summary of what you're putting into your offer. What do you think of that idea?
I like it. We touched on it a little bit before, and you could call that a cover letter for sure, or just a summary of the key points of the offer. Obviously emphasizing, what you feel are the strong points. I think it's a great way to go. It makes it easier for the listing agent. It makes it easier for their seller client when they share the information with them to kind of give them, the highlights, give them a synopsis of this offer. And here's the key points that are going to be really important for them to know about. So I like the idea. I think it's great. I think that it's worth taking some extra steps as an agent representing a buyer that maybe other people don't. There are so many times when a buyer's agent will just write an offer and email it. There would be like no phone call, no attempt to really explain anything about the offer, no touching base with the listing agent to find out what's important to the seller, no cover letter at all, no synopsis of what the strong points of the offer are. Another thing that I think you can do, and we have a loan officer here with Movement Mortgage right in our building, they're willing to call the listing agent and basically vouch for the strength of the pre-approval that they've done for the buyer. So I think if you really go the extra mile and try to think of everything that you can do, it's going to help you to win more deals. It's not going to work every time. You know, you might finish second when there's 15 offers just because of the way the market is. But whatever you can do to make you, yourself and your client stand out without violating any fair housing laws is a great way to go. It's certainly way better than just putting together a sloppy offer and emailing it and saying nothing, you know, and some people do that. It's just not very professional.
Elizabeth, this is Kristen. I've only had one listing so far, and I had 8 offers, and the one offer that we did go with was the one that summarized the offer, and it was so nice because the other ones that I got were, here's my offer, please call, you know, please let me know that you received it. But this one that I got was like, here's a highlight of the contract that I'm offering, pre-approval, non-contingent, escalation clause up to 200, local lender, waived inspection. He said strong deposit, conventional buyer. I mean, it was great. I'm like, oh, this is all the stuff I need to know, you know? So I thought it was awesome to get it that way.
It
Yeah,
sounds like
that's
that
really
agent made it easier for you.
It definitely did, especially because I'm new, but I mean, even if I was seasoned, it would be nice to get the cover letter like that, I think.
That's really good to know, and that they were really stressing that type of thing in that market center meeting. And when I tried it, the other agent said, man, your offer was so clean. And the listing agent said, you know, that shows me that this is going to go smoothly because you have so much attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, ultimately we couldn't compete. The other buyer just, and we were cash also, but we, you know, the other agent just, the other buyer just didn't care about inspections at all. Yikes.
I know that's one of the most frustrating things about this market is the fact that people are willing to waive contingencies so often. I would like it a lot better. I think if more sellers would go ahead and get a pre-listing home inspection that they could share with any potential buyers, I think that then there'd be something to look at, you know, that I'd feel more comfortable with a buyer waiving an inspection if there was an existing inspection there already. So that might be a good strategy for sellers, you know, to encourage offers without home inspection contingencies. As long as they get it done by somebody legit and they share it with everybody and treat everybody equally, then I think it can be a good way to go. But we as agents, obviously, we can't recommend to our buyer clients that they don't do an inspection. We can tell them, here's the options. Some people are waiving inspections. I certainly don't think we should be encouraging it. I think it's a dumb move for any buyer, you know, not to do an inspection. But unfortunately, in the market that we're in now, you know, it can make the difference, like you experienced, Elizabeth, between winning the deal and not winning the deal.
Jeff, I have a question.
Sure.
Can you even have an inspection waived if you have a loan? Wouldn't that be under only cash buyers?
No, most banks do not require home inspections.
Okay.
I think there could be some that do, but I think they're the vast minority, you know, rather than the majority. They usually don't ask anything about home inspections.
I would waive the home inspection for new house because they offer a warranty.
Did you say that you would waive the inspection? I missed the first
If it's
part.
a new house,
A new build?
brand new, yeah, would is that common?
In my experience in new construction, I think most buyers don't have a home inspection. Some do. The ones that don't are typically not doing it, number one, because it's new, but number two, because there's a warranty, you know, that comes, as you mentioned, with the new construction. Maybe they feel more comfortable that way. Years ago, I had a buyer that was purchasing a Ryan Homes model out in Baldwinsville, just northwest of Syracuse a little bit, between here and Auburn. And it was one of Ryan's expensive models at the time. It was like $425,000, which was pretty high end. And my buyers wanted to have an inspection. Ryan agreed to it. And the buyer selected like the toughest inspector that I've ever seen in 25 years in Syracuse. The guy had a reputation for just ripping houses to shreds. And he went in there and did his inspection, and he found about $8,000 worth of defects. And Ryan Holmes fixed every single thing, everything. So in that case, it was smart and it worked. You know, there were problems with things like the way the deck was connected to the house, the way it was done. And at the time, you know, Ryan was using a lot of different subcontractors, and once in a while somebody come in and they wouldn't do it right. And so they were smart. But you know, this guy put the fear of God in everyone when he went through the house, and everybody thought the deal was going to blow up. But Ryan was like, okay, it's all legit. We're going to fix it. And they did.
Nice.
But anyway, long answer to a short question. Most buyers of new construction usually don't do home inspections, but some do. And it's not a bad practice. It's not a waste of money. Not everybody does everything right. There are also home warranties that go above and beyond what a builder's home warranty will provide. And many buyers will consider purchasing a new construction home warranty. Like we use America's Preferred Home Warranty primarily in our market center. And I believe they have a new construction warranty option. So it's definitely something to think about.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other thoughts on preparing and presenting offers, responding to offers, or anything else? We can just make it an open forum. If you guys have questions or thoughts or anything you want to discuss, I'm here, I'm available, we can do it. When we run out of questions, time to say goodbye. So,
Jeff, I have a question. I'm just curious, as the experienced realtor at yourself, when you received multiple offer, what's the priority seller usually look at? Obviously, say number one, price, or something like a run down the list. So as a buyer agent, so we have that in mind, we can emphasize, prepare our offer to based on that priority list.
well, one of the things that we talked about earlier that's helpful is if you can get any information from the listing agent on what's important to the seller. You know, you may find something there that helps you to prioritize certain things in your offer, you know, like closing date or giving the seller flexibility, you know, to find a home if they need some extra time, like a delayed closing or something. That's one thing. You know, price obviously is always important. Sometimes it's not as important if it's in a certain range than some of the other terms are. I think financing is extremely important. I have a VA home buyer right now that I've been working with for about a month, and they're the nicest people. They really are. I love these people, but they need a full seller concession. You know, they're looking in the $250 to $300 range, and they need a $13,000 to $15,000 seller concession to go zero down VA, and they want to have a home inspection. And, you know, we've written 3 offers so far and have been blown out of the water on each one. And, you know, every day I think to myself, is today the day that I'm just going to tell them I can't help them? Or am I going to stay after it knowing that sooner or later we're going to get something? I don't have a lot of flexibility with them other than offer a great price net to the seller. But then on top of that, we've got to add another 13 to 15 grand to cover the closing costs that they need from the seller. You know, so of course the sellers get worried about, will the house appraise? You know, and if they're looking at 10 other offers and one of them's cash or one of them's conventional 20% down, and they've got a $10,000 deposit instead of our $2,000 deposit, it doesn't provide us with a very good competitive position. So I think financing is an important one too. if it's a substantial amount down, a substantial earnest money deposit, it's going to be a stronger offer, along with price. And then you get into the contingencies, here now, if you're going to make an offer contingent on the sale of a house and the house isn't on the market with a contract already on it, you're wasting your time. Most sellers are going to say, go get your house sold, then come back. If it's still available, we'd love to hear your offer. So there's some things now that just are not going to fly that 2 years ago, would have easily flown in a lot of cases. So it's a combination of, things that we've discussed that are always going to have an impact. And then it's also what you can find out about the seller situation that might help you tailor your offer to meet the goals of the seller.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else? Fire away.
Jeff, in the days that we have now with delayed negotiations, when you get offers, do you provide them to your seller as they come in, or do you wait till, the Sunday when you're going to review everything with your seller? So that's my first question. And then my second question is do you put it in an Excel spreadsheet to send to them? Do you verbally talk with them? Are we not supposed to put these numbers in writing to them?
Number one, if the seller has agreed and signed a delayed negotiations form and we've put a deadline on it, I'll usually hold whatever I have until then.
Okay.
Unless they ask me, how many offers have you received so far? I've received 2 offers. Can you tell me about the offers? Of course, we have a fiduciary duty of full disclosure. So if they want to know, I'm going to tell them, what I've got in hand so far and what the terms and conditions are. But we would still honor that deadline, that we put out there for everybody else. So it's a level playing field. One thing we haven't talked about is, what if one of the offers is your offer, or what if one of the offers is from a Keller Williams agent, in your market center or from another market center? A lot of times, even though you're the most honest person in the world and you would never let any of that sway your opinion or try to use it to influence your seller, perception is reality. And some other agents out there might ask you point blank, is one of the offers yours? And if it is, yeah, I've got an offer on my own listing. I'm going to tell them. What I personally like to do in that case is I like to ask another agent or maybe the team leader if they will kind of be the buffer and take a look at all the offers and review them with the seller, just so there's no perception of bias, from that standpoint. So I've done that before. Things are moving so quickly now and so much of it is virtual that I don't think that happens as often as it used to. We used to say to people, listen, deliver your offer to the manager, or deliver your office to the team leader via email by 12 o'clock on Tuesday, or bring your offer to the market center in a sealed envelope to the attention of the team leader. And then the team leader will bring the seller in to a conference room and present all the offers to them. Or it's something you could do if one of the offers wasn't yours. But people handle things different ways. I just personally, as a listing agent, try to take every measure I can to make sure that people feel that they're being treated fairly. I don't want them to walk away and say, Jeff Roney screwed me on this deal, because it's your reputation, it's your integrity, and I don't think anybody here would do that. But I want to make sure that there's no chance of the perception of that. So I'll always err on the side of caution when it comes to any potential conflict of interest.
So do you provide them with all the offer details in an email, or do you do that verbally?
I've done it both ways. I think when you're dealing with multiple offers, it needs to be in writing. So you can do this through command, okay? By putting all the offers in command, it'll allow you to present something in writing to the seller that you can email them right out of command to show them what the high points are. Other times I will go through and I'll just write a synopsis of each one of the offers, and I'll say, here's what we're looking at, and put it in the simplest form, and make sure that every single thing that really has an impact on the offer is included, and then go over it with them. I might email it to them, and then we'll talk about it on a Zoom, or talk about it over the phone, or I might even go meet with them.
Okay.
Last listing that I had, the people wanted me to go over, to the house. They've been vaccinated. They weren't worried about any COVID stuff or anything like that. And, they were like in their 60s, and they like to do business face to face. And I've known one of them for a long time. And, I said, I'm coming over. So that's the way we did it. And it worked out great. I took all the offers with me. I printed them all out, and, went over the highlights in person with them. So it can happen a lot of different ways. But I think that with all the paper and how confusing it can be for people that only sell a house once or twice in their life, it's great if you can make it as simple as possible for them to take in the information and process it and make a decision.
So when you go back to your buyer's agent at 6 o'clock on a Sunday night and say, congratulations, your offer was accepted, what is a reasonable time frame for that buyer's agent for me to put on my request that they have to reply by? Do you understand what I'm asking?
You're talking about a counteroffer?
For the buyer's agent to submit me the counteroffer with his client signed, for them to sign all the documents and send back. Like in mine, I had put an hour, so they had to reply back by 7 o'clock. Is that
wow.
reasonable?
Okay.
Because I was like, what's a reasonable time right now when I've got 7 other people that I still have to tell that they didn't get the offer?
Well, it sounds like in this case that you had a contract and that your seller made a counteroffer back to the buyer, because otherwise the sellers would sign it and you'd just send it back and it would be done. So there must have been a counteroffer, right?
A counteroffer was sent back, but I think that was just the acceptance of
Of the counter from the seller.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in this case, I mean, if the people are available and they're telling you, yeah, this is an acceptable counteroffer, they're giving you a verbal, then you should ask them to get you the paperwork as soon as possible. And if you want to put a time limit on it, great. It's just an hour is not a lot of time. Maybe someone's not available.
Right.
So if everybody's available, as you know, they can sign it on their phone or on the computer in like 2 minutes. So you should be able to get it back within an hour. But if for some reason someone's tied up in a meeting or there's some other circumstance that would prevent them, they might say, hey, I don't think I can get it in an hour, but I could probably get it by 9 o'clock. And they're probably being, forthright, they're being sincere, and that should be fine.
So do we have to put a time limit on there, or it's suggested to do that?
You don't have to. Most people don't. In my experience, they don't. We don't use timelines very much here, but it sounds like in other marketplaces that you do. And there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's perfectly fine.
Okay.
So I think that's great. I mean, you're trying to keep things moving. I get it. And that's what you want to do, keep things moving.
Right.
Real estate agents are here to speed things up and lawyers are here to slow things down. So we have to live up to our purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
This was very, very helpful, Jeff.
That's great. I'm glad that you feel that way. And like I said, I'm in the Syracuse Market Center. I'm easy to find. I'm more than happy to help any of you out with anything. If you have a question or want to bounce something off of me, no problem. Just email me or call me. All my information is in the system. And it's been great to be able to spend time with you today. I enjoy doing this, and I wish you all the best as you're kicking off your businesses or kind of restarting your businesses, depending on what your situation is. I hope that you're really sticking with your daily success habits. That's the key, is to build that database and market to that database and make sure you're consistently feeding it and staying in touch with people. And then business is going to start to come from it. And at the same time, you know, you're out there practicing your scripts, getting comfortable with language, you know, listening, learning, being a sponge, doing as much as you can to get as much knowledge as you can. And also looking at inventory so you can really know your market and studying your market stats so that you can be kind of the go-to person in your local market to give advice. When people ask you that question, they always ask, what's the market like? You know, you've got the tools, you've got the answers. Then you become what Gary Keller calls the local economist of choice. And when you're that go-to resource, you're in a good position. People will trust you and they'll want to do business with you. So have a great day and reach out if you need anything. And I hope we can get together for in-person training sometime in the future. And that way we'll get to meet each other in person. Okay,
Thank
see
you so
later.
much. Have a good day.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll see you, Jeff.